Good morning, everyone. Mr. Harper here, and we're going to start our discussion on the respiratory system. So you can see here a guy that's obviously been running and looks like he's trying to catch his breath. So we need to talk about what this respiratory system does for us. So a quick overview. The big process of the respiratory system is to bring oxygen into your body and take carbon dioxide out of your body. That's the whole job. And this is happening between the air, the blood of your body, and the cells of your body. And you can see here some of the parts is the anatomy that we use to do that. The nasal cavity, the nostrils, the larynx, the pharynx, the trachea, and the right and left lungs. And you notice in this picture that the right lung is a little bit bigger than the left lung. That is because the heart is on the right side of the thoracic cavity and takes up some of the room. So let's look a little bit closer at some of the organs. Of course, that includes the nose, the pharynx, the larynx, the trachea, the bronchi, and in the lungs, the alveoli. So you see these little alveolar sacs that are in the lungs, and the bronchioles, the diaphragm, the lungs, of course, the bronchus. We're going to talk about what all those pieces mean here, the epiglottis. So let's talk first about the respiratory tract. That tract is an airway, a pathway for air to go from your nose or your mouth all the way down into your lungs. And it's a little bit, there's some advantages of breathing through your nose. First, in your nose, you have hairs, nose hairs, you have cilia, little tiny hairs. They're even smaller than your nose hairs, as you can see, and mucus, snot, if you will, in your nose, and they help to clean the air that is coming into your nose. The mucus traps some of the dirt and the particles in the air that's coming in, and then if you blow your nose, you blow those back out. The cilia and the hairs trap some of that dirt once again, and the cilia actually they move, and they pull things that have gotten down into your air pathway back out of your body. The mucus additionally warms the air coming in, and it also moistens it. The interior linings of your nasal passages are moist, and that helps to moisten up the air, and that helps to keep your lungs healthy, keeping dirt as much as possible out of your lungs. Warming up air coming in and moistening it will help to keep your lungs healthy, and that all happens primarily in the nose. Now, let's break this respiratory tract into two sections. First is called the upper respiratory tract. It includes your nasal cavities, your mouth, your pharynx, which is this area at the back of your nasal cavity and your mouth. If you take your finger and open your mouth all the way to the very back and stuck the back wall back there, that area you can see is the pharynx. And then there's also the larynx and the epiglottis. The larynx is this green piece. The larynx, another name for the larynx, is your voice box, helps you to speak. And there is a flap of tissue that covers over top of the larynx when you swallow liquids or swallow food, so that those things go down your esophagus to your stomach and not into your larynx and then down your pharynx into your lungs, in which case you begin to cough violently to get that stuff back out of there. In the nasal cavity, our nasal cavity is split into two sections. We have a right and we have a left nostril, and a right and a left nasal cavity. That cavity is simply a hollow space in the middle of your face, in the middle of your head. And you can see we've looked, and here we have a view where we have cut this sagittally, probably even a mid-sagittal view. So down, let me see if I can get that off the screen. Cannot. But this is the roof of your mouth right here. Here's your nostril where you inhale. Here's your exterior of your nose. Here's the bridge of your nose, and your eyes would be up here. This is a hollow cavity. There's all kinds of little bones in here. These conchae are bones in there, and this is your nasal sinuses that you breathe through here. Your nasal pharynx, this is the top piece of the pharynx. Right here is your mouth. That little hangy ball thing at the back of your throat, the uvula, that's this piece right here. And your nasal cavity is split into two sections by bones in your nose. Here's another look at the nasal cavity. It's separated from the oral cavity down here. Here's your tongue right here. These are your teeth. Well, right here are your teeth. These are your lips. Okay, in this section of the body that you're looking at right here. So these are the conchae bones again, and your nasal cavity. Air can come in and then go down into the pharynx and then through the rest of the pharynx and down your throat. Or you could open your mouth and you can inhale this way too. This area here, this is the hard palate. This is bone back into here. And then this piece, this is the soft palate. This is not bone, this is just muscle. And it hangs down as you can see it starts to fall and hangs down. You can see that uvula there at the back of your throat. The soft palate is a muscle. Actually helps us to swallow. So the pharynx, here it is in purple once again. It's a passageway between your nasal cavity and your larynx here, and also from your oral cavity down to the larynx. Connects all three of those things together. If you've ever done something like, say, got a drink of something, and then just as you got a drink of something, someone made you laugh, and you have two choices. You could, if you're laughing really hard, if you open your mouth, then you're going to spew whatever liquid's in your mouth out everywhere. Or you might have had this happen. You've ever had that liquid come out your nose. What's happening is when you laugh, air comes out of your lungs with force. If you keep your mouth shut, what can happen is that air can go into your mouth and literally force that liquid back out of your mouth, back into the pharynx, and since air is coming out of your lungs, it forces it right up into the nasal cavity and out your nose. That can be quite painful to do. The epiglottis, let's talk about that a little bit more. So here's your epiglottis right here. This is the open epiglottis. When you are breathing, air comes into your nose, in this case since the mouth is closed, down into the pharynx, goes down, and then it goes into the larynx and down into the trachea. This is an open airway. Your esophagus, you can see right here, that goes to your stomach. It's a much smaller tube. It tends to stay mostly shut until you actually swallow something, and then it opens up to swallow and force things down. So here's some food you've gotten in your mouth. When you swallow it, the fact that you're going to swallow, your brain subconsciously closes the epiglottis over top of the trachea, so food is forced down into the esophagus and not into the trachea. If this trachea stays open, it's much easier for food to go down to the trachea, and that will make you cough really violently. Same thing with water. It's subconsciously controlled, and I'm sure you've had it happen where you start to take a drink of something and then you start to inhale and your brain gets confused on a subconscious level. It can't decide if you're going to drink or eat something, if you're going to swallow something, or if you're going to inhale air, and it makes the wrong choice and leaves the epiglottis open, and then down that goes, literally down, quote, down the wrong pipe, because it's going down the trachea, larynx and trachea, instead of down the esophagus. Let's talk about the larynx. The larynx is your voice box, and it contains the vocal cords. We've got a scope here where we're actually looking down someone's throat, down into, this is the top of the larynx up here, and these are your vocal cords. Two thin, reedy-like pieces of material that, as we make air come out of our lungs, because when we speak, air comes out. If you don't believe that, hold your hands in front of your mouth and then yell and go, "Hey!" And you'll hear, or you hear yourself, yells, yes, but you'll feel the air hit your hand. So air goes across these vocal cords, and as it does, we produce sounds. We learn how to change our vocal cords to make that sound higher or lower, and we learn how to change the shape of our mouth and of our tongue to change and make different words. And so these vocal cords are vibrating inside of your larynx, your voice box. And then we have the lower respiratory tract. The trachea, which extends from the bronchi, or excuse me, from the larynx, and then it splits into two bronchi. Bronchi is plural. Bronchus, here's one bronchus, and here's the other bronchus. Those are singular. And then once they get into the lungs, they start to divide and divide, as you can see here in this picture. As they get smaller, we call them bronchioles, which literally means little bronchi. Okay, so I think we will we'll stop at that point. We'll continue our discussion next time as we talk more about the lower respiratory tract. So remember, respiratory tract or airway is a passageway to get air from our outside of us down into our lungs, so that oxygen in the air can get into our blood to be taken to our cells. And also the purpose of the respiratory system is to take the carbon dioxide that is in our blood, goes back into our lungs, and then is exhaled back through our respiratory tract as we exhale. We'll talk more next time.